Tonight, with Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu in Washington for high-stakes meetings.
The Democratic Party has abandoned Israel.
Growing questions whether lawmakers on the left are abandoning support for the Jewish state. Plus,
this is a fight for freedom. The fundamental freedom of a woman to make decisions about her own body.
As Kamala Harris's bid to lock up the Democratic presidential nomination is almost certain, a look at how the abortion argument could shift the 2024 election cycle. And from making baby blankets to knitting helpful hats, see how a team of volunteers is bringing comfort to a community in need. All this and more tonight on Faith Nation. A shakeup in leadership at the Secret Service. Good evening and welcome to Faith Nation. From CBN's Washington News Bureau, I'm John Jessup. Well, less than 24 hours after bruising testimony and unrelenting criticism, Secret Service Director Kimberly Cheatle has resigned her post. The decision comes in the wake of the agency's failure to prevent the assassination attempt on former President Donald Trump. CBN senior Washington correspondent Tara Merchner joins us now. Tara, Cheatle is out, but the investigations into the shooting are ongoing.
That is correct. And for the past 10 days, Cheatle had faced scrutiny, investigations, congressional hearings, plus calls from Republicans and Democrats to step down. This morning, she announced her departure.
In an email to staff, Cheatle writes, "I take full responsibility for the security lapse. In light of recent events, it is with a heavy heart that I have made the difficult decision to step down as your director." And Cheatle added she didn't want calls for her resignation to distract from the agency's work and mission. Her action follows several hours of blistering questions from House lawmakers in this hearing on Monday.
Why was he allowed to take the stage with a suspicious person having been identified in the crowd?
Cheatle herself called the incident the most significant operational failure since the attempt to assassinate President Ronald Reagan.
On July 13th, we failed. As a director of the United States Secret Service, I take full responsibility for any security lapse of our agency.
Mounting criticism of her answers and unwillingness to share information led lawmakers from both parties to insist Cheatle step down.
It is my firm belief, Director Cheatle, that you should resign.
If you have an assassination attempt on a president, a former president, or a candidate, you need to resign.
Oversight Committee Chairman James Comer issued the following statement after Cheatle resigned. The Oversight Committee's hearing resulted in Director Cheatle's resignation, and there will be more accountability to come. The Secret Service has a no-fail mission, yet it failed historically on Director Cheatle's watch. At yesterday's Oversight Committee hearing, Director Cheatle instilled no confidence that she has the ability to ensure the Secret Service can meet its protective mission. House Speaker Mike Johnson met with the director before her testimony and appointed a bipartisan task force made up of 6 Republicans and 7 Democrats to investigate the shooting. He welcomed her decision.
The immediate reaction to her resignation is that it is overdue. She should have done this at least a week ago. I'm happy to see that. I'm happy to see that she has heeded the call of both Republicans and Democrats.
On Truth Social, Trump had this to say about the news. The Biden-Harris administration did not properly protect me, and I was forced to take a bullet for democracy. It was my great honor to do so. Meanwhile, the Pennsylvania State Police Commissioner and the leader of a national policing union also faced questions Tuesday over law enforcement failures that led to the shooting.
We're conducting an investigation largely in concert with and parallel to the Bureau because the actions of crooks have federal legal implications and state law implications.
And after Cheatle's announcement, President Biden thanked her for her service, saying, "We all know what happened that day can never happen again." John, a sudden turn of events.
Certainly is. CBN's Tara Merchner. Thank you so much, Tara. Well, Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu is here in Washington this week working to strengthen bipartisan support for the Jewish state. He'll address Congress tomorrow and meet with President Biden Thursday at the White House. Netanyahu is also expected to meet with Vice President Kamala Harris at some point before heading to Mar-a-Lago Friday for a visit with former President Donald Trump. His trip comes at a precarious moment for both countries, with war raging in Gaza and political turmoil here in the United States. At stake, ongoing efforts to secure a ceasefire. Netanyahu told hostage families in Washington he will bring their loved ones home. Looks like we had the wrong video playing there. His trip. Meanwhile, Israeli forces are striking deep inside southern Gaza. The military says it's trying to stop Hamas from regrouping. The fresh violence has forced, though, thousands of civilians to flee. Well, with that, let's bring in the FDD's Cliff May. Actually, I'm sorry, I'm getting ahead of myself. As Netanyahu prepares to address a joint session of Congress Wednesday, he faces division among Democrats and their differences in support of the state of Israel. CBN's chief political analyst, David Brody, has the story.
When Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu arrived in the U.S. this week, no administration officials showed up to greet him. Vice President and soon-to-be presidential nominee Kamala Harris also chose a campaign event over attending Netanyahu's speech to Congress, something vice presidents typically do. This is due to a party in deep division over Israel. Even longtime supporters like Senate Majority Leader Chuck Schumer have backed away from the current Israeli government.
The Netanyahu coalition no longer fits the needs of Israel after October 7th.
The shift has been growing for years. In 2001, just 18% of Democrats nationwide sympathized with the Palestinians. Now, that number up to 38%. And in today's war between Israel and Hamas, more than half of Democrats, 53%, believe Israel is committing genocide against Palestinian civilians. Former New York State Assemblyman Dov Hikind says his former party is now unrecognizable.
I was a Democrat as an elected official for 36 years, but and now I'm a Republican, and it's obvious why. Because the Democratic Party has abandoned Israel.
And on Wednesday, there will be dozens of empty Democrat seats when Netanyahu speaks as a protest against Israel's war effort. Some have said they'll disrupt his address.
They don't want to show up, don't show up. The show will go on, the applause will go on. Netanyahu will present the reality of what Israel is faced with.
While the Biden administration is taking criticism for not being more supportive of Israel, the loudest voices in this intra-party division are coming from far-left members.
There are a few anti-Israel voices that have emerged in this party, just as there are in the Republican Party. We're doing our best to combat those voices, to make sure that they don't build more support from other members, but also to defeat them.
Mark Mellman's group, Democratic Majority for Israel, helped already defeat one anti-Israel member of Congress, Jamal Brown, who lost his New York primary. Now they're targeting Congressional Squad member Cori Bush in Missouri. Mellman says that while defeating anti-Israel members of Congress is important, there's a major PR battle to be won as well, especially among younger liberals.
There's no question that a lot of young people, particularly, have been taken in by this misinformation. I mean that those young people are going to become a majority and those older people are going to be gone. And the reality is we have to make sure that those younger people in the population at large are as supportive of Israel as their parents and grandparents were.
If that's the goal, then the polling suggests mainstream pro-Israel Democrats have their work cut out for them. David Brody, CBN News, Washington.
All right, thank you, David. Now let's bring in the FDD's Cliff May, founder and president of the Foundation for Defense of Democracies. Cliff, welcome to you. We're so excited to have you today. I got ahead of myself. So can I ask you, first off, what are you expecting to see from Prime Minister Netanyahu's address to Congress tomorrow? Is there anything that he can say or do to help bridge the political divide over Israel?
I think there's a lot. I'm not sure what he's going to say. I'm not privy to his speech. There are a number of points that I think he'll want to make. Let me start with this one, that he needs to make clear, not just to the members of Congress, but to the American people, that this is a war not of Israel against Palestinians. It's not even a war just of Israel against Hamas. What's happening here is a war is being waged by the Islamic Republic of Iran against Israel, utilizing the proxies, the foreign legions of Tehran. And by that I mean Hamas. I certainly mean Hezbollah, which essentially has taken over Lebanon and made it into something of a failed state. I also mean the Houthis, Ansar al-Islam, it's actually called, in Yemen, which, as you know, had a drone successfully strike Israel recently and strike Tel Aviv, which hadn't been hit before. He needs to remind Americans that for 45 years, in addition to chanting death to Israel in Tehran and in its various colonies, they're chanting death to America. So Israel is on the front lines against a common enemy. I think that should be a very key message that he tries to convey.
You mentioned these proxies, both Hezbollah and the Houthi rebels in Yemen, both staging major attacks on Israel. Where do you see this going? Is another war with Israel on the horizon?
Not only is another war on the horizon, another war is taking place. People understand that on October 7th, Israel was invaded by Hamas from Gaza. Gaza is a territory the Israelis withdrew from entirely in 2005. They turned it over to the Palestinian Authority. Within 2 years, Hamas had expelled the Palestinian Authority and taken it over. There was a border between Gaza under Hamas and Israel. So on October 7th, that border is crossed. There's an invasion, there's a pogrom, there's a massacre. But starting on October 8th, Hezbollah begins sending missiles to the north of Israel. And there are something like 80,000 Israelis who have now been displaced from their homes in northern Israel. Now the Israelis have fired back. They've done so in a very targeted and precise way. They've taken out several hundred Hezbollah leaders. At some point, could be sooner, it could be later, unless Hezbollah pulls back and stops attacking Israel from southern Lebanon, there will be a war between Israel and Hezbollah.
Real quickly,
and all of Lebanon will be involved in that war.
Cliff, real quickly here, we only have seconds left, but how would you imagine a Harris presidency looking very differently than a Biden presidency when it comes to Israel?
Hard to say exactly. For the moment, Harris will say my policy is President Biden's, but she has been, let us say, more equivocal about Israel, more interested in a ceasefire quickly rather than the incapacitation of Hamas's military and governing capabilities. My guess is that the Israelis are concerned that she will be more to the left of Biden if she comes into office.
I wish we had more time. The Foundation for Defense of Democracy's Cliff May. Cliff, thank you so much for your analysis and your time.
My pleasure.
Up next, the abortion issue looks to take center stage this election season. How the pro-life community plans to respond when we come back. Welcome back. After seemingly garnering enough support to secure the Democratic presidential nomination, Kamala Harris hit the campaign trail Tuesday, making her first rally stop in the battleground state of Wisconsin. One of the key issues her campaign plans to take on, abortion rights. After the Supreme Court overturned Roe v. Wade 2 years ago this summer, Harris launched what the campaign called a nationwide Fight for Reproductive Freedom tour. The VP assured Milwaukee voters Tuesday that she'll continue pushing for more access to abortion.
Who believe in reproductive freedom will stop Donald Trump's extreme abortion bans because we trust women to make decisions about their own body and not have their government tell them what to do.
Meanwhile, pro-life organizations plan to vigorously combat those efforts. Well, for more, let's bring in Kelsey Pritchard. She's the State Public Affairs Director with Susan B. Anthony Pro-Life America. Kelsey, welcome. So many believe Harris's run will highlight the abortion issue in the campaign even more. As Biden's number 2, she was already seen as an outspoken person on the issue. Now that it looks like she'll be at the top of the ticket, what are you planning to do differently? How does your messaging change?
Well, while Joe Biden could not bring himself to even use the word abortion at times, Kamala Harris is a shout your abortion type of candidate. She is very extreme. She's very outspoken. She was essentially Joe Biden's abortion czar, as she's been on this ongoing abortion tour, and she became the first vice president to campaign in an abortion business. So it's very clear that she's going to be more outspoken. She's going to be more extreme. She'll probably bring the issue more to the forefront. And Republicans are, in response, going to have to be bold on this issue. They cannot adopt the ostrich approach, hiding from the issue and hoping that it goes away. They need to be bold and point out how extreme Kamala Harris is on the issue of abortion, wanting all trimester abortion, not wanting any limits on abortion whatsoever in the states. And they need to contrast that with the compassionate side for the unborn child and for the women and children and for the women and families who need our support.
Kelsey, along those lines, Southern Baptist Theological Seminary President Albert Mohler described Harris as, quote, the most radical abortion advocate in American political history, whereas supporters refer to Donald Trump as the most pro-life president in history, although he did take some heat earlier this year for saying he would not pursue a national abortion ban if he is reelected. Does a Trump-Harris matchup completely take discussion of a national ban off the board?
I will say that the contrast is very clear between President Trump and Kamala Harris. Kamala supports the WHBA, which would ban states from having pro-life laws on the books. So we have 24 states that protect life at 15 weeks or sooner right now. She would ban the states from having those laws, and she would mandate that the states enact all trimester abortion all across this country. That would make us more extreme than China, just as extreme as China and other countries like that. So it's a very clear contrast here. And thankfully, President Trump does a good job of exposing the extremism of the left, and look forward to him talking about how extreme Kamala's record is on this issue. And she's somebody who even voted against born alive protections to protect babies from being killed after a failed abortion. So it's a very clear choice here, a very clear contrast, and lives depend on us showing up to vote in November.
All right. Kelsey Pritchard with Susan B. Anthony Pro-Life America, thank you so much for being with us tonight.
God bless, John.
Coming up, a ministry in Virginia is sharing God's love one stitch at a time. Welcome back. A small act of kindness can make a big difference, especially in tough times. That's where a group called Project Comfort comes in. It's a sewing ministry spreading the love of Christ to people in need. CBN's Lori Johnson brings us this inspiring story.
Each year, the ladies from Norfolk, Virginia's First Baptist Church turn out more than 5,000 useful items made with fabric, thread, and love.
Before I come, I say a prayer that whatever I do today would benefit someone in some way that would touch them.
They call their sewing ministry Project Comfort. Debbie Allen runs it.
I call these our frou-frou hats.
Frou-frou hats.
Feel that.
The finished products fit into one of 30 categories. Hats, for example, feminine ones for women experiencing hair loss from chemotherapy, and more masculine ones designed for men struggling in a different way.
The denim blue, the hunter green, black, charcoal, and all of that, because we run a homeless ministry here. And we provide these to the homeless ministry.
Crocheted baby blankets go to crisis pregnancy centers, along with these machine-sewn pillowcases, while these tiny items are for hospitals.
So these are little vests that we send to the NICUs for the preemie babies. And they're all done with Velcro. So you can very easily open this up, and then you lay the child in there.
The ladies make patriotic-themed pieces for veterans in hospice care.
These quilts bring them comfort while they're still alive, and then after they pass, the family has either a pillow or they have a quilt, something to say, my child touched this. It was with him to the end.
This piece of fabric with lots of pockets fits nicely on a walker.
While it helps, you don't need to know how to operate a sewing machine to join this ministry. In fact, if you've never held a needle and thread in your life, there are plenty of people here who can teach.
like Cheryl Lawson, who brings years of experience.
What better way to share your God-given talents than to help other people and to be here with all these wonderful ladies.
Here, the women take part in an assembly line, cutting, ironing, stuffing, and stitching small multi-purpose pillows for breast cancer patients. They can be used under the arm to protect drainage tubes, cushion the head during infusions, and padding under a shoulder seatbelt.
Something they can take with them when they leave the hospital or the doctor's office or chemo. It's just like sharing a part of you.
These large embroidered bibs are provided to nursing homes.
This has the drapery liner blackout, so it doesn't allow anything that's built on the front to go through.
Even with all the materials and resources needed, this ministry is self-funded.
We have people constantly donating fabric or machines or, everything that we need to make this place run. And it just happens. God makes it happen.
The generous donations also allow Project Comfort to join mission trips to developing countries. There, they pass on donated sewing machines, fabric, and supplies while teaching women how to use them.
They can sew for their family, which was most important. Also, they can sew and earn money from what they sewed. So that was something really different to them.
So while these women enjoy a common bond working side by side, their true joy comes from showing the love of Christ to people in need. Lori Johnson, CBN News.
Finally tonight, the Paris 2024 Olympic Games is promising an open ceremony like no other. For the first time in Olympic history, this Friday's ceremony will take place not in a stadium, but on the Seine River in Paris with the motto, Games Wide Open. The floating parade will feature more than 10,000 athletes, dozens of political figures, and thousands of performers passing Paris's most iconic landmarks while ending at the Eiffel Tower for its grand finale. The celebration will mark the official start to the third time France plays host to the Olympic Games, and we're all excited about that. Well, thank you so much for watching Faith Nation. We hope to see you right back here tomorrow. Have a great night.